Everyone pitied the mountain man's wife until they learned why she chose him. High in the jagged spine of the frontier mountains, where the wind never slept and winter ruled more fiercely than any man, there lived a mountain man named Elijah Crow. His cabin clung to the cliffs, like a stubborn thought that refused to leave the mind. Built from hand-hewn logs darkened by decades of storms, its roof weighed down by stone to keep the screaming gales from tearing it away. The townsfolk below spoke his name in low voices, as though he were part ghost, part warning. Elijah Crow was not like other men. His beard was wild and silvered long before his years, his hands scarred and bent from trapping iron and wrestling, survival from the mountain's frozen jaws. He came to town only twice a year, descending like a shadow to trade pelts for salt powder and flour, then vanishing again before anyone could grow comfortable in his presence. And then, one autumn morning, he returned with a woman riding behind him on the same horse, her arms wrapped around his waist, her head resting against his back as if she belonged there. The town froze harder than the coming winter. Her name was Clara. She was young, too young, the women whispered. Her dress was simple, her eyes clear but heavy, with something the town couldn't name. When Elijah dismounted, helping her down with a gentleness no one expected from a man like him, murmurs rippled through the crowd. "Poor girl," someone said. "What fate could be cruel enough to bind her to that life?" Others shook their heads. "She'll be dead by spring," one man muttered. "The mountains eat men alive. A woman won't last a season," Clara heard them. She heard everything, yet she did not flinch. She stood beside Elijah, her hand resting lightly on his arm, as if she were choosing him again with every breath. The pity in their eyes followed her like a curse as the couple rode away, climbing back toward the clouds and cold, toward a life no one else wanted. Winter came early that year, brutal and unrelenting. Snow buried the mountain trails, sealing Elijah and Clara away from the world. Inside the cabin, the fire crackled and smoked. The walls groaned and the night pressed close. Clara learned quickly how to split kindling without splitting her hands, how to stretch stew from scraps, how to read the mountain's moods from the way the wind struck the door. Elijah spoke little, but when he did, his words were deliberate, as if wasted speech might anger the land itself. At night, when the storms howled loud enough to make the earth tremble, Clara would wake to find him already dressed, rifle in hand, standing watch by the door. He never told her what he feared. He never had to. The mountain taught her all she needed to know. Below, in the valley town, the pity grew heavier with every passing month. "She's trapped," the preacher's wife insisted. "That man's probably cruel. Or worse, empty." Some said Clara had been desperate, others that Elijah had tricked her with lies of freedom and adventure. None imagined the truth. None knew that. Clara had chosen the mountains because the valley had already broken her. Before Elijah, she had been promised to a man with clean hands and a kind smile, a man respected by the town. When the truth of his violence finally surfaced, the town had turned its eyes away, more concerned with appearances than pain. Clara fled with nothing but the clothes she wore and the certainty that she would rather face death honestly than safety built on lies. Elijah Crow never asked her for explanations. He only asked if she could endure the cold and if she could be loyal. She said yes, and she meant it. Spring arrived like a wounded soldier, slow and uncertain. Clara survived her first winter, thinner but unbroken. She learned to trap, to skin, to fire a rifle straight and true. She learned that Elijah's silence hid a fierce sense of protection, one born from losses he never spoke of. When a bear wandered too close to the cabin, it was Clara who spotted it first, and Elijah who stood beside her, not in front of her as they drove it off together. The mountain was not gentle, but it was fair. It rewarded effort, punished carelessness, and respected courage. Clara belonged to it in a way the valley never had. Then came the fire. Late summer lightning struck the lower ridge, and flames raced uphill, driven by dry winds and hunger. Smoke filled the sky, turning day into dusk. Elijah knew they couldn't outrun it, not with the cabin, not with the traps and supplies that meant survival. So they fought, Side by side they cut fire breaks, hauled water from the stream until their arms screamed, and beat back sparks that leapt like living things. When the fire finally passed, the cabin still stood, scorched but alive. Clara collapsed in the ash, laughing and crying at once. Elijah knelt beside her, resting his forehead against hers in a moment of raw gratitude no one else would ever see. News traveled fast when Elijah rode into town alone weeks later, his face grim, his clothes torn. "She didn't make it," someone whispered. Pity bloomed again, thick and certain. But Elijah said nothing. He traded quickly, bought more supplies than usual, and left before sunset. What the town didn't see was Clara watching from the trees above, rifle slung across her shoulder, guarding the trail. She had stayed behind by choice, to protect their home from looters, drawn by the fire's aftermath. That night when Elijah returned, she met him at the door, alive and fierce. Their laughter echoed into the dark, swallowed by the mountains. By the second winter, Clara was no longer the mountain man's wife. She was part of the mountain itself, and still the valley pitied her until the storm came that would change everything if